Somebody had a question in the comments. What is the BMA? Happy to tell you, it's the Baltimore Museum of Art.
She's been investigating and really exploring the idea of maps throughout her career and what a map means to Native people as well as to white Americans. And I'm curious, to hear your thoughts, both of you.
So one thing that stands out to me is this square in the bottom left. And this actually is this marks the Indian reservation. I forget which, Duck Valley, I think. Yeah, that crosses the border of Idaho. And when we think about the way that Native people understand landscape, it's relational. It actually takes into consideration the nature of the land. So this idea that a square is superimposed on this map wouldn't make sense to a lot of Native people who would rather, focus on the river as a sort of border. So I think that it's a very white designation and understanding of the terrain.
Yeah, I mean, and that also is a direct outgrowth of just planning and the way that land was taken by the US government and then distributed for the express purpose of having control over how the US settled and expanded its political power into native terrain. Along with that, one of the things that I've seen you mention is kind of your interest in things that are ephemeral. And so much like somebody asked if the Catarina grossa, is it you, is permanent, I'm sort of curious to hear from you how you think about the duration of your work.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, Veronica, and something that people get quite upset with me sometimes. because so what? Yeah, it's over. Scrape it off, put it in the recycling. It started as recycling, it ends up back to recycling paper again. But for me, it's a few things. It's to do with I use cheap disposable materials to comment on the cheap and disposable way African lives have. It's a direct correlation, I think, between African bodies being shipped and I use material that is used for shipping and sending and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I would say, the third time after trial and error, I finally was able to create an answer to the Matisse painting as opposed to making works that were inspired by. So even for me, it was truly an evolution through kind of unpacking the work and making my own responses. And it was honestly, it was a challenge as well. But to have landed on this last work, I could say more confidently that I arrived at a place when I had an answer to the work.
Well, I appreciate you. I feel like I'm hearing my math teachers from days past, like, show your work. And I just want to say thank you for showing your work, because each of these pieces really illuminates, and I think it makes us appreciate the next one even more. So Shaba, thank you for sharing your work and for showing your work.
And that actually ties in perfectly with a question that we have from a viewer asking if you do sketches beforehand, and to ask if you can elaborate on how you work out your compositions.
So I do sketches before works occasionally, but I also do a lot of sketching with the various pieces that comprise the finished work. All those different parts that build up the figure or the composition, they are kind of loose and modular up until maybe some of the last moments of the work.
Marissa Benson, she said, what are the challenges you're encountering in collaborations and the ways that equity can be ensured? I think this conversation ties into it. Like, if you are in a space where you can amplify a voice, then do that. If you are at an institution where you can make decisions about how projects are happening, how money is spent, be open, be more broad about the way you do it. Who are you bringing to the table to like solve your problems? If you're always bringing the people that either created the problem or who are always solving the problem, it's not going to really get to any equity. And there's not going to be real partnership that reaches in communities beyond the one you already have. So just expanding the way we work and also what we listen to, sometimes change the channel, and you'd be surprised at what, shifting down a few dials and seeing what's happening in other spaces can do, not only for the work you're promoting, but for your own practice. Like, your amplification of another voice actually improves your practice because you're learning. Like, you need it just as much. Like, the institution needs this challenge just as much as the person who's challenged by the challenge.